why would the average person who's not a runner want to wear Peluvas, right? And the answer is because it's the most comfortable shoe you'll wear.
Catching up with Mark Sisson. What a pleasure, and always something new and interesting to talk about.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and I think we're going to have some good conversation today about a whole new concept.
So, as many people know, this primal enterprise has been going strong since the beginning of the ancestral health movement that you helped kickstart, and the Primal Blueprint, the company, then the Primal Kitchen was started, and now it's part of a major Kraft Heinz operation. It's on the shelves in all the stores, and a great journey for you. You're still involved, but you're kind of on to the next thing. And now, after some time in the dark, we can freely discuss Mark Sisson's new business venture.
Yeah. So, I've you go back to co-authoring the Primal Blueprint with me back in 2008 and 9, and it came out in 10. And all along, we were talking about all manner of ancestral living, which was not just diet and exercise, but sleep and sun exposure and play. And we both got very involved in this concept of minimalist shoes or the barefoot lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea that we evolved to be barefoot. We evolved to be covering ground as bipedal organisms with sensory input into the bottoms of our feet that would inform our brains of how much to load the foot, how to bend the ankle, how to bend the knee, how to torque the hip, how to flex the different muscles to absorb shock, whether it was walking, climbing, descending, running. And so in fact, you and I wrote a book that we never published, but we wrote an ebook a bunch of years ago, Amazing Feats, on this idea of developing that skill, that ability that our feet have to become much more integrated into the concept of proprioception, which basically describes how we orient ourselves in this world, how we know where we are relative to everything around us in this world. Well, when we're barefoot, mm-hmm. We have that sensory input. We have that proprioception. We have that ability to the 10,000 nerves in each of our feet that sense the ground underneath are able to inform the brain give the information so that when we do finally make that stride forward, everything is already prepared to happen. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is over the last several centuries, when we've been wearing shoes, we sort of bypass that sensory input. So over the years, we've created these amazing shoes that are great looking and
sturdy
and cushioned,
comfortable
and cloud-like in their in the benefits that they confer to people who are looking for the ability to walk softly and whatever. But they bypass all of that important information, and they scrunch our feet together, and so people tend to get foot issues. I mean, I read a thing, the American Podiatric Association said that some 77% of people complain of foot pain throughout their life. And some major subset of that has like major issues that require some intervention, whether it's orthotics or surgery or physical therapy. So, with all of that's going on with footwear, here I enter the picture as a runner in the late 60s, early 70s, and I'm running 40, 50 miles a week as an endurance athlete, as a distance runner. Why didn't I run more? Well, my feet were what told me when to stop. I couldn't run more because I had these very thin minimalist shoes that sort of told me, look, it's time to stop.
Yeah.
In the 70s, Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman introduced, the Nike trainers, these thick, waffle sole, big cushion shoes, which enable people to run, like myself, to run 80, 90, 100, 110, 150 miles a week. Now, the feet weren't hurting very much, but then it bypassed all that information, and the rest of the body took the brunt of the force and the stress. So people got knee problems, and they got hip problems, and they got all sorts of other problems. So the invention of the high-tech running shoe did not reduce the number of injuries over time. So I went along with that for the longest period of time. I ran a lot. I cycled in tight cycling shoes. I play ultimate frisbee and cleats.
You have a whole closet full of shoes.
But I was never, that comfortable in the shoes, and I still got injuries. So I knew that there had to be a way to, I was one of the early adopters of the first 5-toed shoe back in 2006 and 2007. I thought it was a great invention, a minimalist shoe, 5 toes. You want to articulate the toes, not just give the toe box room to move sideways, laterally, but up and down to be able to feel the surfaces that you're going over. And that company did a fairly decent job of creating a brand of 5-toed shoe, but it was ugly. I'm sorry, it was ugly, and I couldn't wear it outside the gym. And I tried to work with them to create something over the years. Finally, after I sold the company, after I sold Primal Kitchen to Kraft, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to really focus on creating the dream shoe, the shoe I always wanted for myself, one that would give me that individual toe articulation, the up and down movement and the lateral movement, would also create a little bit of more cushioning, not so much, like 1 centimeter total of what we call stack height, that was wide, thin, flat, and flexible enough so that it was functional as a minimalist shoe, but also that had some style, that blended kind of this minimalist sole with a attractive upper, and gave it the combination of comfort, number one, function, and style.
And the journey's just starting now. So exciting, because again, you're kind of doing this upstream swimming venture. There's so much momentum, and we've been programmed so strongly to go and look for the most cushioned, sturdy, supportive shoe so that you won't get injured. And I'm talking about, of course, the athletic population, but also the people on their feet, the nurses, the warehouse workers. And we're just trying to continue to invent more ways to ease the strain on the foot of freaking taking steps and walking. So I think we need to back up a little bit and unwind this. One thing that came to mind when you were talking about how humans are made to, locomote across the earth with walking, the ultimate form. Dan Millman said in his book, The Inner Athlete, what the greatest human athletic achievement is the baby taking its first steps. Because by physical calculation, scientific calculation, we should not be able to balance all this much weight on things that are only 12 inches long on each side. It's a miracle that humans can walk. And you see when a baby's first take, you got your grandkids, have they taken their first steps yet?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the younger one, Kyle?
Yeah. He's running all over the house now.
Yeah, but those first steps when he was trying, you forget, oh my gosh, he falls left, he falls right, he falls forward, he falls backward. It's like, wow, it's a miracle that we can walk. It's
like a Segway, right? It is a miracle. No, what other animal? I mean, you usually, this is on a tripod, 3 legs, Most animals are quadrupedal, they have 4 legs. But to be on 2, you really have to, the balance becomes, we take it for granted, but much of that balance comes from this concept of proprioception, of being able to feel the ground underneath and understand what position to bend our knee in and bend our ankle in and flex our ankle in. And so it's a real interesting, evolutionary challenge that we've overcome with these amazing feet that we have. And then we encase them in these, casts that have this much thick sole and provide zero input.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we're clomping around earth, in these boxes that we've created, these shoes, versus, springing and lightly stepping and loading and unloading as we move through the earth and across the earth, in a way that most closely approximate how we evolved. So my challenge was, how do I create a barefoot experience with a good-looking shoe that people will want to wear, not just in the gym, but walking and going to work and going out to dinner and going to the club. And we've come up with 6 different styles. The name of the company is Peluva, Peluva.
Was that Portuguese by any chance?
Well, it comes from pé, which is foot, and luva, which is glove in Portuguese.
All right.
But it's a made up name, and we trademarked it, and we love the name. We love the way it kind of rolls off the tongue, and it's gotten a lot of traction, as they say in the industry, so far. So there are a lot of people who are already who are using the shoes in various configurations, whether it's in the gym lifting heavy weights or doing some of the knee over toes guy sort of backwards walking, or the Brad Kearns of the world doing sprint drills, or people who are in the workplace. Nurses are wearing one of the versions of our shoes in the workplace because they're on their feet all day, and they want. It's not just about the cushioning, but the fact that you can spread the toes out a little bit, or not only gives you a sturdier platform, but it allows for circulation in the foot, which is a big thing, and it allows for this articulation sideways of the big toe. So many people spend their lives with their big toe being compressed, angled into a shoe, when it should be more kind of spread out, and it's that big toe that should be guiding the push off, say, when you walk. But we sort of, we usurp its authority by encasing it in something and then just saying, okay, the whole foot's going to move as one.
So we'll talk more about the confusion, controversy, the backlash about minimalist shoes that have happened in recent years as they became popular 15 plus years ago. But I think we got to focus on this proprioception concept. Katie Bowman talks about it a lot, and the difference between that baby taking their first steps with those 10,000 nerve endings, feeling and sending those signals to the central nervous system, if I'm saying it correctly. But the general insight is that we need that feedback desperately to figure out how to balance and not fall over to the left, fall over to the right. And then it's nullified to whatever degree. You're going to nullify it a little bit when you put on a protective barefoot style shoe. But if you get a big hiking boot or something, the thing that's really interesting to me, and the research on running shoe injuries and running injuries in general, is that the impact is now dispersed away from the foot and the Achilles tendon, which are built to handle that, and the metatarsals. And now your foot feels better in a way, like you experience more miles, but now you're getting jarring impact. Your proprioception sucks, so your form could be compromised by that. And then what's happening in the rest of the body?
Right.
From your cushy shoes.
From your cushy shoes. And cushy shoes over the years have prompted an entire generation of runners to just be heel strikers, right? and we're supposed to be sort of midfoot runners. And that doesn't mean that everybody should run on their toes all the time. But the advent of this overly cushioned, thick, maximal shoe allows people to, like, you're supposed to walk heel toe. That's right. You walk heel toe.
So big distinction, important. Yeah. We're supposed to walk heel toe. Right. But walking and running are two different categories of movement.
Correct.
And we're supposed to run, not heel toe, but rather
with a lead on the midfoot. So, your heel can touch, but it sort of leads with the midfoot. And if you look at, most elite runners, they're not heel strikers. They're, for the most part, they're midfoot strikers. Yes, the heel does touch, but it's not leading. If you look at most, 4-hour marathoners, it's all heel strike. It's heel toe, heel toe, heel toe. And that's made possible by a shoe that it actually not just allows it, but encourages it because of the thick heel and the drop. This drop of an inch or an inch and a half from the heel down to maybe half an inch at the forefoot or at the metatarsal. So, it's the fact that it allows people to run marathons doesn't mean that that's good for them or that the shoe is somehow benefiting them. It's just sort of, again, bypassing a normal way of running. So back to when I started running in the 1960s and 70s, there were no shoes available other than these very, very thin. If you read Shoe Dog, if you read Phil Knight's,
the movie coming up, if you don't read, like many of you,
the Tiger Onitsukas were the shoe that he licensed to sell in the U.S. And they were very thin, very flat, and in retrospect, they were great shoes for teaching that sort of forefoot running. They certainly prevented any sort of heel running because you just couldn't. Because that's not how you're supposed to run. And if there's no accommodation of that heel, it's like you had no choice but to run more appropriately as a faster runner.
Yeah, you remember Barefoot Ted McDonald when he came to our retreats, and he'd have the people get a barefoot lesson. And I remember some of his memorable things, like if you jump off a 6-inch perch and land on your heels, you're going to crush your heels. You can't do it. It's tremendously painful. Right. But even any human, if asked to jump off a 6-inch perch, is going to have that barefoot. Yeah. They're going to have that beautiful landing where they land, the metatarsal spread, the impact is transferred, the Achilles tendon goes down to the ground, the heel goes down, and then you spring back and you absorb the impact. Right. But then you're running 26 miles, landing every time and not feeling that impact because of the padded shoe. Right.
So now it's important to at this point say, I don't recommend that anyone run in our shoes. Right. So the Peluvas are not designed to be a running shoe.
Hold on. Our marketing department is waving like this in the background.
They are
this move.
So what happened with some of the original minimalist shoes was people got injured because they thought, oh, minimalist shoes, that's a great idea. And, I'll go from 80 miles a week of heel striking to, 80 miles a week of midfoot or forefoot striking. And that just created injury and problems with plantar fascia and Achilles because the small muscles of the feet were not used to it. When you were encased in these cushioned, motion stabilizing shoes that were the sort of all the rage from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and even now in the running community, you basically let all the small muscles of your feet atrophy, including your arch. Your arch didn't work that much. So when people went out and bought, in the early days, they bought minimalist shoes and they tried to run. They read the book, Born to Run. Sounds like a good idea. I'll go run, in these minimalist shoes. They got injured. So what we recognized early on was, the key here is you want to allow the small muscles of your feet to work easily throughout the day. That's why we have we created shoes to wear at work, at the gym, walking, doing, elliptical, even cycling. But not doing the jarring kind of, running stuff that would maybe injure your feet because you're not trained for it. But over time, train those small muscles of your feet to become more flexible, stronger, build the arch up a little bit. And so that if you've done this sort of passive training throughout the day by wearing these shoes, then when it comes time to go for a run, put on your running shoes. When it comes time to go to the track or to go to the football pitch and put on your cleats, you put on the shoes that were specifically made for that. But we wanted something that was going to be, again, comfortable first. Like I would guarantee these are the most comfortable shoes you'll ever wear. It's gloves for your feet. Comfortable first, functional second. Very few other shoes have this individual toe articulation so that when you walk over any surface, not only do you feel the surface, but your brain literally smiles at the effect of changing surface. I just went for a walk before this podcast. I did 2 miles outside the house here, and it's on the sidewalks of Pacific Palisades.
Concrete.
These are the worst sidewalks in the world because the tree roots, these giant trees have it's like tectonic plates, right? They've changed every bit of the sidewalk is like walking over a rocky trail. I love that. I crave that because my feet want to change. They want to change position with every footfall because that's how my feet are getting stronger, more flexible, and building up that strength without running, without doing anything other than just walking and feeling the surface underneath, because the Peluvas are only 1 centimeter in thickness, right? So it's a cushioned layer of a few millimeters of cushioning.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it's just a layer of cushioning, which, by the way, wasn't there in previous 5-toe shoes.
Correct.
And
So
it made it really
as
tough,
you know, because you've
integrate.
been wearing our strands for a while now. And you in the old days, I would go for a walk in the other competitive 5-toed shoe, and I would get bone bruises after like 2 miles or 3 miles. Last summer I took some prototypes of the Peluvas to France, and I spent 3 months in Europe, and I put 650 miles on the shoes that you are wearing.
I hope it's a different pair. The model that I'm wearing, or the shoes that I'm wearing, because they came in a box and they smelled pretty good. But
yeah. No, but I put a lot of miles on them, and many of those miles were like days of 10 miles or 12 miles of just pavement, just concrete. So one of the things that the barefoot minimalist shoe community has argued for the longest time is, as I have, we evolved to be going barefoot, right, all the time. Well, that's great, but the conditions under which we evolved were, tamped down earth, padded dry moss, uneven terrain, but it was not pavement, macadam, tar, hardwood floors, tile floors. So that if you think about going barefoot today, it's pretty impossible to go barefoot, even if you're well adapted, because after a certain number of miles or footfalls on these hard surfaces, your feet were not, our fat pads on our feet aren't that thick to have absorbed that amount of shock because of all of the hard surfaces. So we wanted to create a shoe that was more akin to walking barefoot on a putting green, right? And that's the feeling we want to give people. So you play golf, don't you?
I've tested out minimalist shoes on the golf course, and
but you've walked barefoot on a putting surface, right?
Oh, sure, yeah. Go out there and fool around and just run through the grass. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
I think to further emphasize this point about comfort, because when I excitedly talk about my minimalist shoes, and when you're walking down the street, I don't know about you, but like everyone's looking at these shoes. It's so fascinating, and I get comments all day long. And I think it's the articulated toes, obviously, that are unfamiliar to people. But when you say they're more comfortable than a padded, cushy, firm, sturdy shoe, and I excitedly convey this message to a member of the nursing population or something, that it's inconceivable that something that's low to the ground with no support and no padding, how can that possibly be comfortable than my pair of Hoka's, those fantastic cloud shoes with the giant padding on it?
Yeah. So what's interesting is people buy shoes typically in a brick and mortar shoe store where they will try the shoes on and they'll walk down the aisle a couple of times and the shoes will feel great because it's like, wow, these shoes are cushioned and they feel awesome. I'll take them, and then take them home. Well, that's great. But then when you spend all day in them, or if you walk several miles in them, what happens is you lose that contact with the ground. You lose that proprioception. So yeah, they're cushiony, but that cushioning is bypassing the information that should be telling your knees to bend a certain way. And if your knees don't bend that way, maybe you get knee problems after a couple of hours or a couple of miles.
Lower back.
I mean, I wear some of them. I've worn and tested some of the nicest, most highly respected new brands of running shoes in the world recently. And I can't do more than 2 or 3 miles without my knees or my lower back hurting as a result of this loss of proprioception, this loss of contact with the ground, because all I'm doing is I'm giving all of the information that should be coming to my brain and telling me exactly how to bend my leg, exactly how to flex my foot, exactly how to bend my ankle, how to torque my hip as I go forward. All that information gets lost and winds up being, again, it's dampened by the shoe, which feels good on the first couple of steps, but after, as you go through the day, it adds up, and it's not a good thing.
I guess another way to experience this, that we're not bullshitting, that this is actually true, hard to believe, is when you stand up for hours. I don't know about you, but I'm aching after an hour straight of standing up, wherever it is. My lower back, my hamstrings, my glutes, my calves, everything starts to ache because we're not adapted. I'm not. Maybe some people don't ache as much, but it doesn't matter what shoe, right? It's my lower back, my hamstrings, my glutes, and all that.
Right.
But I noticed when I was wearing minimalist shoes and started in many, many years ago, that it was more comfortable to stand for long periods of time without the padded, cushiony shoes. And also, we didn't talk about posture, how if you have an elevated heel of any height, guess where your body weight, center of mass is going? It's loading onto your metatarsals. But when you're standing, you know why that bone is, the calcaneus is the most dense bone in the body, or one of them? It's designed to support our weight. We're supposed to stand on our heels. Katie Bowman's book, Move Your DNA, goes into more detail here. But those heels anchor all of our weight. As soon as you put a shoe on, you can see my gestures, but I think you guys can get it here, is that you're going off your heels and then loading forward. It can promote hunched shoulders and all those things because now your center balance point has been moved up by the elevated heel.
Right. I mean, that's one of the key tenets of any minimalist shoe is what they call zero drop or little to no drop. Mm-hmm. And that could be as little as
drop. Describe.
Drop is the difference between the heel height and the forefoot height. So in many of these running shoes, again, the heel is already an inch off the ground, and then it might drop down to a quarter of an inch or a third of an inch at the metatarsal or at the forefoot area. So that drop is, as you say, is tilting you forward. And again, it feels like, if you're a runner, it feels like, oh, I'm moving forward because I'm headed in the right direction, which is forward. But in fact, it's causing these issues with an imbalance because it's the heel and the midfoot and the forefoot are supposed to be pretty much at the same level on the ground in order to extract the greatest amount of input from your moving patterns and not incur some sort of injury.
We can rattle off the names of a dozen wonderful brands of minimalist shoes. We've tested them over the years. They're great. They offer varying levels of increased support to the traditional, legit 5-toe shoe. Right. So why is a articulated toe footwear different, distinct from all the ones that are also zero drop, but have the toes encased?
Well, that's a huge distinction. And there are, as to your point, there are a number of great, minimalist shoes that have a wide toe box, but you want the toes to be splayed. That's the SPL.
Splay.
Y, splayed. And
let's play, kids. Let's splay.
And you want them not only be splayed, but to be able to move up and down with the terrain. So if you walk over a root, or if you walk over a pebble, or if you walk over an uneven surface or a change in surface, that you want the toes to be able to move according to that. You don't want to have them all be boxed together, even though they're comfortable in terms of width. You don't want them to be boxed together and all act as one unit when you're stepping onto an uneven surface. I remember when I first got into stand-up desks, my feet would get kind of tired from standing, and so I got a pebble mat. You remember that pebble?
I have 5 of those now. I give them as gifts. It's the greatest thing ever.
They're a bear to ship. They cost so much to ship.
They're real rocks webbed together. It's a beautiful product.
It's amazing. So, and it was so kind of luscious to be able to be barefoot and feel the changes in the surface by just shifting your feet around a little bit. Well, that's indicative of what the feet want. The feet want to feel the surface that you're walking on. They don't want it to be bypassed. I look at people taking hikes. I'll hike Temescal up behind our house here. And people and it's a very uneven surface, and I love it for that. It's like every time your foot lands, it's in a different place, right? And people are wearing thick, stiff hiking boots. I'm like, oh my God, how are you not like twisting your ankle because it's a lever that, if you step the wrong way, first of all, it doesn't get any traction. Those things, because they're stiff, you step sideways on a slanted rock, it slides down. I never understood hiking boots for that reason. So I go up in minimalist shoes. I go up in my Peluvas, and every footfall feels amazing. And every rock that I step on, even if it's a sharp rock, because you don't feel the sharpness of the rock. You just feel it's been blunted by the centimeter of thickness in the sole.
Well, people also imagine, like, if you step on a really nasty rock with your second toe, imagine even if you're not watching, what the shoe's doing is the toe's giving.
Yeah.
And so I was at first scared to use them on a trail, because what if I do hit a rock or something? But you go with the flow so much more easily. You don't even notice a small pebble, which if you were in a running shoe, it could hit you in the wrong spot and drop you in a way,
Yeah. So this idea that wide, thin, flat, flexible. So you don't want any drop from heel down, and like women, don't give up your high heeled shoes because they look fabulous. But I've seen so many women's feet over the past couple of years. We've been doing this. The R&D behind this project goes back 2.5 years, and trying to cram your toes into a narrow stiletto heel, and then by being up on the heel for great long periods of time, it shortens up the calf muscle so the calf doesn't have to lengthen, and then that puts a lot of stress on other parts of the foot. Women tend to get bunions over time if they try to force themselves into these stylish, high fashion shoes. All of this can be avoided, and some of it can be fixed by just putting on a wide toe box shoe, and particularly one that has individually articulated toes, i.e. gloves for the feet, i.e. something that allows the toes to be comfortable and to function the way they're intended to function, but also and then to feel good about yourself because they're stylish, right? They look good.
Okay, here's a question for you. Put on your physics, exercise, kinesiology hat. I enjoy high jumping, as listeners know. And when I'm in the gym, I can graze the rim with my finger at age 58, a big accomplishment for me at 5'10" and a half, when wearing the Peluvas, if articulated toe, individual shoe with zero drop. In basketball shoes, I cannot touch the rim. Good Kobe lightweight basketball shoes, I'm an inch or two, whatever I am, lower. Right. And why is that?
Well, because you're giving so your feet are basically part of a coiled spring, and your Achilles. When people are running, the best marathon runners, their calf muscle doesn't even work that much because they're just constantly loading their Achilles with sort of the same tension. So it's not like they're hitting and then a calf muscle is going from short to long because it's extending, and there's not a lot of this going on because it's basically just loading and unloading a coiled Achilles.
Right.
Now, when you go to jump, you're not going to jump and touch the rim on a move, and a basketball move, from a standing position. You might if you're
if you get hops,
if you're 7 foot tall center. But if you're going to dunk, or if you're going to jump up on the rim, you load it, you run into it, and then you load it. Well, when you load it in a cushioned shoe, all of that loading, all that spring gets dampened by the cushioning of the shoe. And so by the time you go to push off, you've given half of your vert, not half of it, but 10, 20, 15% of your vert,
compressing the
pad in the shoe, and dampening it, versus when you have just that little, again, that 8 millimeters of what's remaining in the Peluva, and you go to jump, all of that is all of that is the spring that you've loaded to get up to the rim.
So the Achilles tendon is allowed to stretch and explode fully, the maximum propulsive force potential. And this also occurs every stride at whatever pace we're running.
Right.
Like on my running technique instruction video, I say when you're jogging really, really slowly, you still have to leverage that propulsive force of the Achilles tendon on every stride by striding properly. And the wearing a minimalist shoe or going barefoot facilitates this automatically.
Right.
And wearing the opposite shoe challenges you from exhibiting good technique and shortens that Achilles tendon. So here's a funny one. Dr. Phil Maffetone has talked a lot about this. He wrote a book called 159, and someday they're going to run a marathon under 2 hours. He argues that theoretically and also literally and practically speaking, the fastest marathon will be run by a barefoot athlete someday.
Yeah.
Because less weight on the foot, there's no ounces of the shoe.
Right.
And also the
More
foot
efficient.
is allowed to be more explosive and powerful.
Right.
I don't know if you buy that all the way, because you talked about the streets and the concrete and the broken glass.
Yeah, but that's
but
walking.
it's interesting.
Walking. So walking is different from running. So the running thing, I totally buy that, because now when you're looking at speed and efficiency and loading that Achilles, absolutely agree with that. When I'm talking about walking, now we're back to heel striking first, not exaggerated, not in an overly exaggerated way, but heel hitting first and then rolling onto the foot. Then you do want some padding, and normally we have a pad in the heel, the fat pad, which absorbs that in combination with the surface that we find in nature, which is a mossy field or even a hard packed dirt. On the savannas of Africa, on the plains of Africa. But very rarely did our ancestors encounter a hard, flat, completely, even surface, except maybe frozen ice.
Right. Yeah. Which
that.
probably still gives more than concrete.
Yeah,
right. Maybe some of you younger listeners are not familiar with the name Abibi Bikila, but Mark might be able to comment on that dude.
Won the Olympic marathon in Rome or Mexico City.
Twice, 60, 64. Yeah.
Barefoot.
Yeah. So that showed a lifelong barefoot guy from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And then when the Africans started winning the big races like the Olympic Golden Marathon, they started getting sponsored by Nike and getting shipments of giant cushy
had to
shoes.
Wear the shoes.
Yeah. But it's interesting to think that guy was once at the top of the world and actually shattering the world record at the time. Right. What did he run? 2:14, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Barefoot through the streets of Rome.
Yeah.
You can look him up on Google, picture this guy running barefoot, winning the Olympics.
Yeah.
So it's no joke.
And then Zola Budd,
Zola Budd, another name from the past. Hopefully some listeners remember.
Raced against Mary Decker, and Zola was barefoot.
Barefoot on the running track at Los Angeles Olympics. I saw that. Fantastic. Yeah.
So, so we're back to like, why would the average person who's not a runner want to wear Peluvas, right? And the answer is because it's the most comfortable shoe you'll wear. It is, I think, better for your feet to have these, the opportunity to have a wider, even the wider toe box and the articulated toes just gives you a bigger platform. We talked in the beginning of this podcast about we're only operating on these 2 12-inch long little platforms that, if we can make them wider by spreading the toes out, we increase the surface area, we increase the amount of input that our brain gets, where our proprioception improves. Think about being, walking across a carpet with Legos left out from the night before in the dark at night, right? To get to to get to the refrigerator.
Yeah.
For your midnight snack, barefoot. That's the sort of proprioception, that we're designed to handle, right? So the second you step on that first Lego, all the information your brain needs comes up to it, and you know how to weight the foot, you know how to bend the ankle a little bit, how to. And so if you're not trained to do, if your feet aren't strong enough to be able to do that, maybe you do roll an ankle. But if the small muscles of your feet are strong and flexible and pliable, then it's not a problem.
So now we have a big issue here in 2023, which is, what did you say, 77% people complaining of foot pain, and a huge percentage of people are pretty far gone, where their feet are so messed up that even taking a new pair of Peluvas and integrating them by walking around the house, there's some fear and trepidation probably, and there's also an art to it, because again, the truth is you can mess yourself up if you get away from those padded, cushiony shoes that you've been working your shifts in, and now you're going to try Peluvas on your next shift. Be wary and tell us how we can integrate sensibly and successfully.
Yeah. So if you've never done this before and it's new to you, it's foreign to you, then the first challenge is going to be getting your toes into each individual toe box. I've sat with people for like 7, 8, 10 minutes trying to get their toes in the first time. it's such a novel experience. But it's also an indication that if you can't do that, you need something to start separating your toes. Look, I don't know how many tens of millions of toe separators have been sold in the last couple of years. It's a very popular thing, wearing these toe separators around the house or at night when you're sleeping, because there's a recognition that you want your toes to be spread out a little bit, and that modern shoes have scrunched them together. Well, we offer a shoe that does that automatically, and now you get to walk throughout the day and outside and at work and going out with this sort of same concept of the toes being separated. But it takes some getting used to. You have to take time to put them on the right way the first time. But normally what we find is that after a couple of times of wearing these, people go, yeah, now my feet slide right in, just as if they were regular shoes, and they feel good. So with that, I would say, wear them an hour the first day, walk around a little bit, wear them a couple hours the second day, see how you feel. Most people adapt, immediately. But if you've had foot problems and if you've got other issues that are causing you to rethink your footwear, take it a little bit slow wearing these. But I'm very confident that this is going to help a lot of people with their foot issues.
Yeah, hopefully you'll get an epiphany really quickly, such as standing up in one place for 10 minutes and seeing how now your load dispersal is more efficient, your proprioception is increased dramatically. And then to take this idea further, if you are able to go all in, like you and I did, I started back in 2006 and understood the concept that we were writing about and realizing, geez, we should be barefoot. That's how the body works best, and the posture and the standing. And then that long, hard road of committing to something different than a lifelong reliance on arch supports, pads, foot massage machines, and more cushioned shoes. But there is kind of a fork in the road. And I think we see this on look in the Primal Blueprint and how many topics were attacked. Prescription drugs, a snack in the afternoon that's high sugar and high caffeine. There's all these diets. There's all these places where we can go, which way am I going to go? Am I going to go the prescription drug route and just the slow, steady decline, relieving some of my pain? And same with the foot scene. Am I just going to keep buying I love how the recommendation to buy a new shoe every 250 miles and keep track of your miles, because by then the padding has gone down and you can't. And it's I do the opposite. I try to keep my shoes in play for as long as possible until they stink or they fall apart and peel off. So
it's funny you say that, because the shoes that I took to Europe last summer that I put 650 miles on,
still around.
Now they're right where I want them. Now they're right where I like them. They're so thin and so. I want to I want to make sure that the last couple of miles are used judiciously, because they feel so good when I put them on. So it's I think people tend to, want to have, I think the comfort thing is a big issue and it was for me. Look, I have been wearing nothing but minimalist shoes for 15 years. And the reason I started this company was I was really dissatisfied with the styles and the functionality of the shoes that were out there. And I just thought I could build a better looking shoe and a more functional shoe. And I am very clear that that's what we've done. We've created a Peluva for all occasions. For the people who are watching, I mean, we have, this is a going out to this is called the Miami, and it's for beach clubbing. And
it's like a slipper with still the articulated toes with no strings or just slip right in.
Right. This is a leather lace up, a Napa, very rich Napa leather lace up for going to work, or as I like to say, weddings and funerals. It looks really stylish. This is the kind of shoe that if I didn't want you to notice that it was a 5-toed shoe, you wouldn't even look down at my feet. You'd say, "Oh, that's good." From the side, obviously, it looks just like a regular shoe. This is a white Strand that I work out in. I notice you have the same pair on right now. It's a great shoe, very functional for all kinds of things in the gym. Here's just a blue version of that.
You can see all this at Peluva.com.
And so you go to Peluva.com, and we've got a nice selection with lots of different styles and lots of different colors for men and women. And we have socks too. We have 5-toed socks, because some people want to wear socks with their shoes, and you can't wear regular socks with a 5-toed shoe.
And we have in the material that we've worked on, the research and suggestions for foot exercises and things that you can do as you kind of make this commitment. So what I envision is, and I appreciate everybody listening to just be open-minded and consider a different route than ultra super duper padding. And that would also integrate into walking around the house barefoot, going out onto the sidewalk with your Peluvas, doing foot circles while you're sitting, watching entertainment or working, and getting the feet back into the game because they've been so diminished and disrespected and atrophied. And so thinking of it as this big picture objective, there's no magic here. And I think you mentioned a little bit about how these runners got too exuberant and went and got themselves injured. I had a really interesting experience where when I first committed to the Minimalist way, and I said, I'm so sick of this plantar fasciitis. It was a 15-year injury, pretty severe. And I finally decided I'm going to strengthen my feet, strengthen my Achilles tendon. I walked around all summer barefoot or wearing the five toe shoes, and the long-standing case went away. And I developed a pretty bad case in the other foot because everything changed, and the other foot wasn't used to not wearing the padded heel. And so then I had to treat and deal with that one. And then I finally escaped from the trap, which I'm sure I'd still be suffering from this stuff. It breaks my heart. Tiger Woods drop out of the Masters with plantar fasciitis. If he'd just call me or just listen to this show, we could send him maybe some. If you have a budget for promo, we could send Tiger some Peluvas just unsolicited and say, dude, wear these around the house and you will start going in the direction of healing rather than whatever the doctors have done to his body,
Yeah. And we have to be careful that, I can't make, medical claims about healing, but I can talk about, the biomechanics of the foot. And one of the things that people will observe, they'll say, well, A, are they comfortable? Yeah, they're very comfortable. That's why I made them. B, so they must have a lot of arch support. They have zero arch support. Why would they have no arch support? Well, because you want to use your arch. You don't want to be resting your arch on part of a shoe that unburdens your foot from having to build a strong arch. And it's ironic that some people would come to me and say, well, I would love to try your shoes out, Mark, but I have weak arches, or I have no arch, or I have, I wear orthotics. And my response is, well, the reason you wear orthotics is because you have weak arches and you need to build them up. And it's rough. It's rough because a lot of people would say, well, without the arch support, without the orthotics, I can't walk at all. Well, I get that. I understand that. But you got to start by understanding that the arch, nobody is born with flat feet. Right?
Is that so?
No, you're not born. By the way, the term flat feet, there are people who have amazing arch muscles, and just their feet look flat. They just don't look like they have an arch. Doesn't mean that that's not strong and totally functional. But nobody's born with horrible arches. They have to, you are born with great feet that are ready, willing, and able to do all the stuff you want to do. If you're barefoot, if you do the foot exercises, if you put your feet through the right ranges and planes of motion, you'll develop strong feet. But if you start at a very early age encasing your children's feet in cute little, versions of Gucci and Chanel and Nike and, whatever, that can start a problem. So ideally everyone would go barefoot, right? That would still be my ideal. I go barefoot as often as I can. In the absence of going barefoot, I wear Peluvas.
Well, also for the protection when you're doing something active and athletic. I wouldn't go hiking barefoot, although we did go on this really cool muddy trail in Maui, and my son and I spontaneously took off our Minimalist shoes and walked the rest of the way in this really soft mud. And I got a few thorns and stickers, and it could have been, I could have been cut or something. Right. But I think this is like the perfect compromise to where you're protected. And now when you get good at Minimalist experience, you can put these into the mix, jumping up to touch the rim, doing sprint workouts, playing pickleball, and things that you couldn't imagine. Wait, don't you need a really protective, thick, a shoe to cut back and forth on the tennis court? Well, no, you're going to be quicker and more laterally agile because you're getting rid of all that padding and stuff that mess with the Achilles tendon and the metatarsals.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Mark Sisson, just marching on. And you've been at this game for a long time. Did you ever think about, settling into a life of leisure? Or were these thoughts driving you as soon as you exited from the previous company and then the next day went to work designing Barefoot shoes? Or how did that go?
It wasn't quite like that. I tried to be retired after I sold Primal, but it didn't work. So I was going crazy. I mean, I've always had something to say. Look, going back to Mark's Daily Apple, and wanting to put it out there and have these ideas that I think other people would like to hear. That's how I started my supplement company. I'm making product that for athletes who don't want to be using performance enhancing substances or illegal performance enhancing substances. So I will help them with, natural performance enhancer or recovery enhancers. That became my first company, Primal Nutrition. And then with the food company, I'm like, oh my God, I'm making these great sauces at home and I can't buy them in the store. I think people would love these kind of sauces. That's what became Primal Kitchen. And so this fascination I've had with foot health and foot comfort for the past several decades, and my frustration at the fact that no one made a shoe that I was proud to wear outside, and get dressed up and feel like not only am I very, very comfortable in my shoes, but I'm also pretty damn stylish. So that's really what started this whole thing with Peluva. And, we're getting a lot of great, input and feedback and traction, a lot of, accolades from a lot of great influencers now. And, almost all of it is like overwhelmingly positive. Wow, where were these all this time?
I wonder if you're going to speak at a podiatry convention anytime soon. And if you got to the Q&A portion, would anyone object to this idea that we're better off barefoot or near barefoot? I mean, how do you unwind evolution today with an argument?
I think there are people who still object to. There's still people who advocate for a maximal shoe with maximal support and maximal cushioning, and people who advocate for bunion surgery and all sorts of other interventions, medical interventions. There's certainly people like that who still exist, but I'm seeing more and more, especially in the orthopedic and the podiatry community, who are like, no, the foot is an amazing development. It's one of evolution's finest hours, and then we've gone and messed it up. It's like, it's like saying, this guy is an amazing piano player. Let's put mittens on him. Let's put oven mitts on him or her and have her play Rachmaninoff. Right? Yeah. That's kind of what it's like with footwear these days.
Well, let's change that one day at a time. Thank you so much for listening, watching. Mark Sisson, Peluva.com. Follow them on social media.
We should probably do some sort of a
giveaway.
Let's
do a giveaway.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Send us an email, podcast@bradventures.com, and we'll pull your name for a winning pair of shoes.
There you go.
Right on. Okay. That's a wrap.